When I say Slovakia and alcohol, you're probably thinking of beer, and rightly so. We actually did visit several very nice places with some very good craft beer. But here's the thing, next to you to the right are the small Carpathian Mountains, with the gentle slopes not being higher than 800 meters above sea level. They turn out to be perfect place to grow wine. So there are Slovaks whom I actually disagree when you say beer, because they will think of Slovakia as wine country. And we are going to visit one of those wine towns called Svätý Jur, or simply Saint George. Turns out the mountains here, they actually do have hundreds of years of history of wine growing and wine making, and there are a number of very cute towns around. We actually chose Saint George for one particular reason. Now, normally we do not show you the places we're staying, but I think it may be time for an exception to that rule. Welcome, my friends, to the Renaissance Wine Mansion. Now, here's the entrance. Let's have a look inside. Now, the very first thing you'll see is maybe not the most impressive piece. Plenty of chairs. But let's jump in to the courtyard. And here it is. And during the day, it can be rather crowded. But let me show you now. Beautiful vines overgrowing one of the sides. And there is a beautiful little entrance. What happens when we continue walking up? Well, we're going to enter the place where we are staying. First, it's just a kitchen, yes. But let's continue a bit further. And you're going to have this beautiful bedroom here. And mind you, if you think it's old, it is. Such roofs were typical of the 17th century. So here we are going to stay for 2 beautiful nights. Not enough? Well, there's a mini bar with red and white wine on tap. So you just pour your own and then you write on the side what you took, because of course that's not for free. But then you can try the wine outside, or if you prefer, you can go down to this nice little cellar and try the wines here. So we absolutely love the place. Now, I might have mentioned that sometimes it's busy. So 9-10 a.m., that's something you may wake up to. And maybe some of you are thinking, yeah, well, but it's very noisy and so on. Well, actually the noise didn't reach the bedroom. And it's really cool when you wake up kind of lazily and then you go out and here's such a vibe. So it kind of energizes you. At least that's how we felt about it. It is pretty awesome, I have to say. A little bit of trivia. So this vine is officially 400 years old and oldest in St. George, plus a little bit of an artistic evening impression. Plus, if you'd like to know more about the place, here's the Instagram profile. Of course, you can always simply ask in the comments. So let's take a lazy stroll down one of the main drags. Now, what you need to know is Svätý Jur is right next to Bratislava, and it is this kind of typical weekend escapade town. Now, first thing, of course, there's a little castle, and it's the Palfis again. This family is following us for several episodes now. I think they're stalkers. But at least that's how it looks like. So stalkers, but stalkers with style. Anyway, let's continue down the road and you're gonna have all those nice little wine taverns. But even though it is weekend, and I told you this is the escapade town for the capital, you are never going to see many people. And this is something we actually did notice before in the other towns. There are hardly ever many people in the streets. And I mean like weekends or evening. At least we are kind of used to evening, people go out to have a beer or something, and there's always a bit of a crowd. And here, when you see 15-20 people together, this is a crowd indeed, And I have no idea whether it's a cultural issue or what, but this is something that we did notice. But I'm missing something. Something's missing. It's not the Moi, it is here. Oh, of course, a synagogue. Well, here it is, and unfortunately in such a state. So that's a bit of a sad thing, really. But let's not get into sad states. Let's continue with wine, but in a different town, a town called Modra. Now they are also one of those nice, cute wine towns, and they show it at every corner, and in some very interesting ways. Some of them are rather creative, I'd say. For example, there's this horrible 70s big communist supermarket, so the barrels are in front of it to make it cuter. But now that communism was mentioned, you may remember in episode number 3 we found this Sorella style from the 50s. So there, this graffito was full-on folklore. Well, here it is again, but this time, as Modra is a wine town, it's full of wine. And to be honest, it was a very nice surprise to find the Sorella style again. But of course, here's another synagogue, way better than the previous one, but that's because now people live there. Have a look at the right, and there's a satellite dish. Well, anyway, it wasn't the wine nor the Sorella that was the highlight of Modra. We actually found this kind of factory workshop of the Majolika, so thin glazed pottery. The story begins supposedly in the 16th century, when the first Protestants started coming to today's Slovak lands, and not only Lutherans or later Calvinists, but also here so-called Habaners. Or you might have heard of the Anabaptism movement. If none of the words ring a bell, some of them, when they emigrated to the US, they became known as the Amish. It's pretty much the same religious group. So when they arrived to Slovakia late 16th century, they started that exactly. They started thin glazed pottery, and they became very quickly very famous because of that. So the locals started pretty much copying their techniques. Eventually, most of the Habaners left, but the technique stayed. And today it is considered the one of the traditional products of the zone. Vicky loves such places, so here we came. The shop was nice, but even better is the workshop itself. You can see and feel the handcraft here. So we decided to buy a little souvenir. As Vicky found in the last episode her throne, now she found her wine cup to go with it. Well, actually, now that we reached such royal standards, let me tell you about one extra little escapade of a royal level. So the situation is as follows. There's a place called Slovenski Grove, and mind you, the very first thing that we saw on our trip in the first skansen were geese. And you know, geese fly around and so on and so on. Actually, they don't fly. Anyway, they're tasty. So of course, you can breed them, but you can also eat them. And the village, the Slovenski Grove, they started preparing them so well that they became with time the capital of geese in Slovakia. So we decided to have one evening of luxury, and we came to a place called Kormański Grove, and we're going to try supposedly the best in all of Slovakia, roasted goose. One extra detail, wine only from the local mountains. Now a bit of a nice soup, and my vegetarians, close your eyes please. Here you have a beautiful roast goose with some lovely red cabbage. Open your eyes again, because now it's dessert, all of it super tasty. And I know it looks like I'm advertising just one spot now again, but I do believe they're all great, so I'm advertising all of them now. But time for the last bits of the evening. Finally, that everybody's gone from the place, we can have the last bit of the day. Degustation of wine. Self-service and rather crude, but as you can see, the most important bit, this pretty awesome little wine cellar, is completely ours. Well, you can imagine the rest. And actually, I guess here we could just say goodbye. with the wine and everything, but I wouldn't be myself if I didn't spoil it and add some history and extra stuff to the whole thing. So here we go. So now we are walking around the woods of the small Carpathian Mountains. It's nice and green and calm, and I think you can also see a bit of sun for the leaves, and you can hear in the background the birds chirping. It's all nice and beautiful and quiet. But as we walk, there is something really weird in front of us. The thing is, there's this weird kind of a little trench, and you may be thinking maybe it's from the First World War. Maybe it's even from the Second World War. Well, neither of the two. This is kind of a trench, but it's not modern. It is a remain of something very, very old. So here we are. Welcome to Hradište. So this is what's left of kind of a fort. Not much, as you can see, it's basically a forest now, and a bit of archaeological digging. But what's important here, this is remains of a fort from the times of the first proper Slavic country in Central Europe, something called Grand Moravia, which existed here in the 8th and 19th century. So today the only thing really telling you about it are those fortifications, really, not trenches. This was kind of a moat, and the palisade in front of it, that's the little weird hill. Because the idea is simple, both back in the day and during the modern wars. If you dig a hole and put a wall in front of it, it's difficult to enter the hole. Anyway, think of it as kind of a motte and bailey, actually. The palisade here is a palisade. You're thinking wood, probably, well, wood's inside. And then it's covered with earth. Anyway, about Grand Moravia, we're going to talk way more very soon. So, yep, sorry, I did have to add something historical. But no complaining, please, as there are no rocks this time. It's plenty of wood. Well, it's nice and green at least. But maybe the most important bit now, it's walled below the foil that you have on the ground. Now, mind you, archaeologists do come here and they dig out very interesting things. And this is something I will keep repeating forever. Indiana Jones is no archaeologist. He's a grave robber and a tomb raider. Now, the real work of archaeologists is very different. They come to such places like this when we think there's nothing. They stay, they dig for months and years, and they come up with all the awesome things we see in museums later. So please do appreciate their work. Now, with this little lecture of mine, it is time to leave the beautiful wine country and move a bit further south to the capital. It is time for Bratislava itself. And I think it comes as no surprise, the capital will have plenty of stories to tell us. So I can already tell you, buckle up, and I will see you very, very soon.